This prison was supposed to be nearly impossible to escape from. It was heavily guarded, surrounded by walls, and designed to hold some of the most dangerous prisoners in Northern Ireland. But on September 25th, 1983, something happened that would shock the United Kingdom. This is the story of Maze Prison Escape, the largest prison break in British history. Maze Prison was located in Lisburn, Northern Ireland. The prison was built during a period of intense conflict known as the Troubles. Inside were prisoners connected to paramilitary organizations involved in the conflict. The prisoners were kept inside heavily guarded compounds known as H-blocks. The buildings were surrounded by fences. There were guard towers, security checkpoints, and prison officers. Escaping wasn't supposed to be easy. Maze Prison was considered one of the most secure prisons in Europe, but the prisoners still had one advantage. They had time, and they had been studying the prison for years. The escape plan was incredibly ambitious. The prisoners needed to overcome several problems. First, they needed to take control of their own H-block. Then they needed to take control of the prison officers. Then they needed weapons. And finally, they had to get past the main gate. The plan depended on surprise. If the prison authorities realized what was happening too early, the entire escape plan could collapse. So then, on September 25th, 1983, they made their move. It was a Sunday afternoon, and the prison was operating with fewer staff than it would during a normal weekday. This gave the prisoners an opportunity. The escape began when the prisoners overpowered the officers inside the H-block within minutes. The situation had completely changed. The guards were no longer in control, and the prisoners were. Some prison officers were taken hostage, and the escapees seized their weapons from the prison's armory. Now they were armed, had hostages, and made the prison a battlefield of control. But there was still one enormous obstacle: the main gate. The prisoners needed a way to get through it, and they had a plan. They took control of a prison van and forced a prison officer to drive it towards the main entrance. The vehicle approached the gate, but the prison's security system was designed to stop exactly this kind of escape. The gate was heavily protected. But the guards outside had no idea that dozens of prisoners had already taken control of the prison behind them. The escapees now had to convince the guards that everything was normal. They used their hostages to help maintain the deception, but then the situation became chaotic. The guards began to realize something was wrong. The prisoners were running out of time, and the escapees rushed to the gate. And suddenly the impossible was happening. Prisoners were escaping one after the other out of the most secure prison in Europe. Some made it over the perimeter, others ran through the countryside. 38 prisoners were outside the prison, and the largest prison escape in British history had just happened. But the response was immediate. Police were mobilized, roadblocks were established, searches began across Northern Ireland, the escapees were scattered, and some were quickly captured. Others remained free for much longer, but the damage had already been done. The prison that was supposed to be almost impossible to escape from had just lost 38 prisoners, and the embarrassment went far beyond the prison walls. The escape became international news. The security of the prison was questioned, and British authorities faced intense criticism over how such a massive breach could have been allowed to happen. In the end, many of the escapees were recaptured. 15 more were captured after a few years, but 4 managed to remain at large.